Hey, welcome to our journey of exploring violence as a prevailing practice in the culture of the United States. Um, this exploration includes the understanding that violence is over against the life and teachings of Jesus, because Jesus revealed a way of relating to others with the attitude and actions of empathy and sacrifice, not violence. And it also includes the understanding that there are many faces of violence. Some are far more noticeable than others. Now, the last 2 weeks, we examined faces of violence within our faith communities. Shunting and indoctrination are faces of violence, and that surprised many. Uh, However, when we examine the context of our working definition of violence as any intentional or unintentional, covert or overt act or use of force which denies or refuses to recognize or respect the identity, the values, the rights, or the humanity of another person, indoctrination and shunting falls within that definition. Now, this week, we're beginning a new category of the faces of violence. In the games we watch and in the games we play. The games we watch on the field and the games that we hold in our hands. This week, we'll begin looking at the face of violence in the games that are played on the field. Now, some of you know me pretty well, which means you know that sports and athletics have been an important part of my life. I watch and enjoy athletes perform on fields, turfs, courses, and courts. And in the context of being a participant and fan, I must recognize that the games we play often become a pathway for the practice of violence. Now, games can be played without being a pathway to violence, but often they become a pathway to violence. My awareness of this happened a long time ago. Um, Games being played, and it was a baseball game, and our coach had a very clear understanding of why we played the game. And there was an excellent athlete on our team, and he did what he did so well. He got a base hit, stretched it into a double, and slid in to second base safe. And our coach called timeout. We didn't know what was going on. And he went out to second base. And he talked to this teammate. And the teammate shook his head, yes. And so the coach called for a runner to replace this star of our team. And the star walked over and sat on the bench. The runner that the coach put in, he couldn't come close to running as fast as our star could. Why did he make the change? Well, he slid into second base with sharpened cleats that he always filed his cleats so they'd be real sharp. He slid into second base, and the cleats were aimed at the shortstop, not the base. And our coach saw it happen. He walked out and asked him, "Did you aim your cleats at the other player? And the player said, yeah. He said, you're out of here. And he sat him on the bench for a game or two. And that was because the constant theme of the coach was, we do not play to win at any cost. We come to play the game to play the best we can play. Sometimes we're going to lose. Sometimes our best means that we will win. We come to the field to play the game and do our best. If we come just to win, we will think less of ourselves when we play our best and lose. That's not fair to us, he would say. If we did our best, we stand with pride, even if we lose. When we win, we will think more of ourselves if we come to win. And we will think less of the other team because they lost. And that's not fair to them if they played the best they could. The theme would be repeated time and time again. We are here to play the game and play the best we can. Our star player continued to file his cleats. He believed that sharpened cleats improved his speed. In some of the fields we played on, cow pastures included, he was probably correct. But you know something? I watched that player play a lot of baseball. Never again did he aim his cleats against the opponent. For our coach, that was violent and had no place in the games we played. You see, it's easy for games to be a pathway to violence. It's like in football. You can tackle your opponent and release your grasp right when his knee hits the ground. That's playing the game. But it's a pathway to violence when you tackle the opponent. His knee hits the ground and you continue to hold on because he might twist his knee and be injured and couldn't play anymore. In basketball, it's whether or not you're trying to injure the other as he goes up for a shot. Do you intend to block the ball in order that the ball won't go through the hoop? Or do you hit his body so the shot will be missed? That's the difference between playing the game the best you can or using the game as a pathway to violence. You see, one of the faces of violence is in the games we play on the field. When the purpose of an action is violent against another rather than doing your best. You know, one of the enduring teachings of Jesus was to do no harm. Physical injury is involved in playing games. However, physical injury, when it's the result of intending to do harm to injure another, is simply another face of violence in our culture today. And my observation is that in our culture, games as a pathway to violence has become much more popular when violence is experienced than when games are played by persons just trying to do their best. Games which include the pathway to violence are often more followed, more popular, and acts of violence are more likely to be replayed on the tube. 40 years ago, a person I worked with and from whom I learned so much introduced games among our youth which could be played without the goal of winning. These required cooperation rather than competition. Participants cheered when they cooperated. And I watched and marveled at how these games enhanced relationships and accomplishments were celebrated. It was interesting to me that the sources of many of these games were other cultures throughout the world where games were intended to provide for the release of emotions and harmless entertainment. I always return to my coach's theme. We come to play the game and do our best. It's my observation that field sports are much less likely to be pathways for the face of violence when this is a reason for the game to be played, rather than playing to win, which too often involves taking the opponent out. You've heard that expression a lot, haven't you? With cleats targeted at another instead of the base. You see, games can be played without being one of the faces of violence. But too often, this is not the case in our culture, in the games we play and watch. Another face of violence. A lot to think about, a lot to be annoyed about, but for your thought and conversation, what's your response to the understanding that many sports in the U.S. include an unnecessary path to violence? Secondly, in your opinion, is winning an essential goal of the games we play on fields, courts, turfs, and courses? And finally, what are the purposes of playing games which are compatible with the life and teachings of Jesus to do no harm? Thank you for being a part of our journey.